Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Destiny and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and start working with the user registration form for the e-commerce tutorial. And in this one, we're going to be working with forms, we're going to be working with views, we're going to be working with templates and URLs, and we're going to understand how to create a user in our Django application. So you want to see more videos like this, drop a like, consider subscribing and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss any series. And you want to get a template and the source code for this project, check out the link in the description below. This should help you get started. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and open up my code editor. And remember from the last time we worked with the user model. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and close out the admin, close out the URLs, close out the settings. Yeah, that should be it. And I'm also going to close out the models because we won't be needing that for now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and create a simple view that's going to get the registration page. So right now, all I will have is this home page over here, right? But when we come over to something like I'm going to go back. When we come over to something like /user/sign-up, we want to see something over here that like a registration page, something like that. Hopefully you understand. Now, how do we go ahead and do that? Firstly, we need to come over to our steps and let's see what we've got. So the first thing is to create a new form. Then we need to write view to register. Then we need to configure templates and login. But I'm going to be bypassing this a little bit. Firstly, I'm going to create a view that's going to display a page, like a registration page for us over there. Now all we need to do is open up the user auth, open up the views.py, and just over here we're going to create a new one, and this one is going to be called register. Let's just say register view, something like that. But usually I like using underscores, so I could just say something like register underscore view, and instead of using the camel case style. And over here I'm just gonna return, I'm gonna say return render, and I'm gonna pass in request in here. I'm gonna pass in request, and we need to pass in the name of the template. It's gonna be in a folder called user auth, and it's gonna be called sign up. Okay, so it's gonna be called signup.html. So when that's done, that's pretty much it. Now let's create a URL for it. So remember the way we created a new URL in the core from the other videos, that's the same thing that we're going to be doing over here. So I'm going to say from Django.url, so I'm going to go ahead and import path, and also I'm going to say from, I think that was from userauth.views, I'm going to go ahead and import register view. But instead of doing this, I just want to say from userauth, I want to import the whole views. Okay, now I'm going to say app underscore name should be equal to what's the name of the app. It's called user auth, but take note, you could call that whatever you want. Now I'm going to say URL patterns should be equal to, this takes in a list, and this list firstly is going to take in the path that we imported from the top. And over here I'm simply going to say views, what do they call it, register view. I'm going to say the name should be, I'm just going to say sign up. Okay, so I want to be sure that by now you guys understand everything that's going on over here. That's why I didn't actually take a lot of time to explain everything, because I've done this in depthly in the first video explaining URLs and views and all that. Hopefully you guys understand. But if for any reason you don't know what's going on, I'd want you to just take a few steps back to the first video, the very first one, and you're going to understand how all this works. Okay, so now where we've done this, I think that should be it. Now let's come over here and refresh this page. Make sure that your server is still running. Okay, this is not going to refresh. That's because we need to still include it in the ecom prj urls.py, the main urls.py. Hopefully you got that before me. Now I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to say userauth.urls, and this one we could just call it user /. Okay, I want to be sure that you guys understand everything that's going on here. But if for any reason you don't understand, just timestamp whatever time is it now on the video and drop a comment in the comment section, and I'm gonna help you out. Okay, so when we refresh this now, make sure your server is still running. I'm going to take a close look at my server. Now I think there is a problem, and that problem should be a comma problem, so we need to add a comma over here, and I'm also going to add a comma over here so I don't forget it whenever we want to do something else. Refresh this, come over here, refresh. What do you notice? There is still a problem. So let's see what the problem is. It wants us to come over to user, and it wants us to come to a name that's called sign up. So I'm going to come over to this URLs over here, and over here this is supposed to be sign-up. slash. Okay, before it's gonna work. As simple as that. Now we're gonna come over to user. This first user that we came over to is simply this one over here. Now the sign up is, you guessed it right, this one over here. So now we should refresh this, and what you notice, it's working, but it doesn't have a template that's called signup.html. And in order to create the template, I'm just gonna copy everything over here. As you can see, I did that already. Now I'm gonna minimize all those other folders, come over to this one over here, and I'm gonna right click new file and paste what I copied. Now automatically it's going to create a folder called user auth, and it's going to create a file in there called signup.html. Simple as that. Now when we refresh this, everything is working perfectly well. So now I'm going to follow start from the first step. It said we should create a new form that's called user register form in the forms.py. So before I go ahead and do this, I want to explain a little bit about what forms does. So in Django, remember, okay, let me just say in HTML, if you want to pass in forms into a template, how do you do that? You create a form, right? Then you pass in input fields, right? Then let's say this one is going to be a placeholder of something like, let's say email. Let's say we're trying to create like a user registration platform. I'm going to say password. I'm going to say password. And this one's over here should be like password, right? And this one over here should be what? This one should be confirm password. And there is one more thing that's missing. That's the username. So username. So now if you come over here and refresh, what do you notice? We have our really cool looking form, right? But there's a problem. And also we need a button. So we need a button, and we're going to say register. So don't get me wrong when I say that you can also use this to register users in your Django app. You could use it, but the gotcha is that you're going to be creating a whole lot of conditional statements and logic to actually check if the informations that are passed over here, the data and the values, actually matches the one that Django would accept. You have to write if statements to check if they are clean data. Okay, and that's why using the Django form is highly recommended. And I'm just going to comment this out for now. That's why we want to use what's called Django form. So Django form is automatically going to create all these fields for you. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to create it for you automatically because we are the one that are going to be doing it, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that you're not going to be putting in input fields like this. Rather, we're going to be doing it from the Django form, okay? Now, in the user auth, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it forms.py. So there is no compulsory name for this. Now, in this form, we want to import a couple of things. I'm going to say from Django, I want to import forms, just like that. And I'm also going to import something that's called a user creation form. So I'm going to say from Django I think that should be contrib.auth.forms. Hopefully, I haven't forgotten. Then I'm going to say import the user creation form, okay? Then finally, I'm going to say from, I think that's user auth.models. I want to go ahead and import the user that we just created. Okay. So now what is the user creation form and what is the forms? So this forms is simply coming from Django, obviously. And I want to make this a little bit bigger so you guys will see everything that's going on. So this form, as you can see, is coming from Django. And this form is pretty much what helps us create all the forms that we're going to be needing. It's going to help us work with fields, widgets, as you can see from over here, form sets, bound fields, and just a whole lot of things. And if you are confused, don't worry, I'm gonna clear out everything for you. I'm gonna be more explicit with explanations. And over here we've got user creation. Now what does this one do? This one is pretty much the one that gets the passwords, the first name, the last name, the email. It's the one that gets every single one of those for us, okay? And that's what we're going to be using to to extend the form. So over here we simply want to say class, and you can call this one user register form. Take note, you can call it whatever you want. Now instead of passing in forms.model form, because that's what you'd see a lot of people passing a lot of time when you're trying to create some other forms that are not user creation form or something like that. Now what you want to pass in is the user creation form that we imported over there, and that's because we are trying to create a user for the database, or rather we're trying to create a user that we're going to store in our database, and that user is going to have access to perform things like authentication, work with passwords and all that. So it's highly recommended that you use the user creation form. And over here, the first thing that we could do is just go ahead and say class meta, and that's because we want to add in some other things over here, like the model that's going to be called the user. Now this model is pretty much user. This user is one that we imported over here. This user is pretty much the one that we created over here in our models.py. And why we passed in model user is because that's the model that we want to be interacting with. That's the model that's remember from the database, rather from the admin section, this user over here. Remember, it's this user that have the opportunity to do the password related things. Hopefully you still remember the password, the login, and all that. So that's the user that we want to interact with. Let's say you're trying to create like a to-do list. In your model, you're going to have a to-do list model that's going to help you write notes, complete notes, and all that. Now over here, you want to allow other users to be able to see a form that they're going to use to write notes in their to-do list application. Then what you want to do is interact with the to-do model that you're going to be creating. So I'm going to go ahead and run this through so that I will see everything that's going on. You also want to add fields. Now those fields over here is just pretty much any field that you'd want to show up. So remember the way we're passing in input field, email, username, password. Now this is where you need to pass in those fields now. So what are the fields that we need? We need username, right? And what else do we need? We need email. So let's just say we need username and email for now. And I'm just doing this because I want to show you guys that whatever you pass in here is the field that's going to show up. So now I'm going to import this user register form in the views.py. Open up the views.py over here, and I'm going to say from, and it's user.auth.forms. I want to go ahead and import the user register form. And over here, I'm going to say form. You can call that wherever you want. It's a variable and should be equal to the user register form that we imported. Then I'm going to invoke it right away. So invoking it is just by putting in this parentheses over here. And when that's done, I'm simply going to create a context variable. Now take notes, this context, you can call it whatever you want. Also, it's a variable, but this is a dictionary. Okay, I assign this to a dictionary, this over here. Now, as you all know, dictionary takes in key value pairs. Now the key is going to be form. You could call this one penis, or you could call this one let's say lotion, or whatever you want. Then make sure that what the value you're going to pass in is going to be form, and that's whatever that's in here. So if what we got over there was bananas, then make sure that the value that you're going to be passing in over here is going to be bananas. Okay, so now in order to explain what's going on and to be more explicit, I'm going to change all this back to form, and I'm going to change all this to form. So if you are curious, you might be like, okay, Destiny, why are we creating this context and what do we want to use it to do? So we are creating this context because we want to access this form thing that we created that had all this username and email field. We want to be able to display these fields in the template. And how do we connect the template, or rather, how do we connect this form to the template? Since we are not using the input fields like this, okay? Since what we are using is this form over here, how do we connect this to this? Now that's why we created this, right? We created this. Then in the views.py, as you can see, we imported it. Now you remember, it's this sign up page over here that helps us render this code over here that says return render. That's what helps us display this page, right? And if you are like, okay, how does that happen? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the P, so that's I'm going to create an error. Now if I refresh this, what do you notice? There is an error. It says template does not exist. That's user auth sign up / sign u.html. So now if I put back the P, now you see that it's actually that URL that's helping us render this perfectly well. Okay, so now we want to access this form that we created over here. We want to access it in the template. We created this form, this context dictionary. We passed in the key, we passed in the value, and we are simply going to come over here and pass in the context variable. So by now you should already know that this is what we are passing in here. Okay, so when we've done this, now I'm just going to copy this key. Now you want to copy whatever is it that you have in here, come over to your sign up, and just down here I'm going to create two curly brackets, and we're going to pass in the form. Now if you come over here and refresh, let's give this a couple sec, what do you notice? Now we have username, we have email, we have password, and we have password confirmation. As easy as that. So all this is showing up simply because we have this, I'm going to get back to the form. We have this user creation. So if I say something like forms.model form, make sure your server is still running, get back to here and refresh. Now what do you notice? We have just the user and the email, as simple as that. Now you could even make this form look a little bit more nicer, and I'm going to increase this so you guys will see. Now we could say form.asp, so that they're going to be on the same paragraph. We're going to see that right now. So as you can see, we just have the username and the email, but that's not what we want. We also want to have the password and the password confirmation, and that's where the user creation field comes in. So hopefully you guys understand why I said we should import the user creation field. And you could read this up on the documentation. There's a lot of custom functions that you could use like this. If you open up this forms over here from Django import form, Django.contrib.auth import user creation form. If you open this up, then you're gonna see that there is still others. There's this user change form, there is authentication form, there is password reset form. There's just a lot of it, and as you can see, the list goes on and on. So read out the documentation. This should help you get conversant with all this. Now if you refresh this, what do you notice? We have this again. Now I'm just gonna get down here and I'm gonna put a button, and this should be register. So we have a button now that's called register. What do you think is going to happen if I fill out this form? And you might be like, okay, what did I use to fill out the form? It's called Form Fillers. You should check it out. Download the extension from Google Chrome, and it should help you fill out forms automatically. So if I fill out this form and hit register, what do you think is going to happen? Bro, nothing is going to happen. That's because we haven't written anything that's going to process this form. So the first thing that we should do is put all this into a form tag, right? Because that's the first step to start telling the template and the Django, hey Django, we are kind of getting serious over here now. We want to create something real cool, and by doing that you want to put in the form over here. And now if we come over here now, refresh this and fill in this form and register, what do you notice now? The form refreshes. So you try submitting this form. As you can see, something is actually going on. Now take a close look at the URL over here. I'm going to copy everything that we got, and I'm just going to put it in here. So just down here, I'm going to create a text area thing, and I'm going to refresh this. That's just for typing purposes. Now I'm going to paste in what I copied from the URL in here. Okay, make this a little bit bigger, paste it. Now what do you notice? It's got the username that will pass into here, it's got the email, it's got the password, and it's got the password too. That's great, because something is actually happening, right? And if you were doubting that, I'm going to pass in all this again. Take a close look. The username is Sedoc. Now if I go ahead and register, I'm going to copy everything that we have in the URL. I'm going to paste it here again. I'm going to increase this. Now what do you notice? The username now is Sedoc, so it got the username that was passed in here. So something is actually happening, right? Yeah. Now what we need to do to even make this form more active is to go ahead and pass in something that's called Django CSRF token. So CSRF token is just a simple built-in function that helps us, rather a template tag that helps us prevent cross-site forgeries, and it generates new token each time our page refreshes. Now let me show you what that means. So if I open up my page sales, now you'd see that there is this weird looking input field that's actually invisible from over here, but visible with our sharing gun eye over here. Now that's because this CSRF token over here gets added here automatically. And take note, whenever we refresh this, what do you notice? It's refreshing the token. So whenever this token doesn't match with whatever session we are working with, then it's gonna say, hey Django, it's like something malicious is about to happen. I'd want you to go ahead and quit whatever transaction that want to go on, and there's going to be an error. It's going to say, it's going to show a 404 error, something like that. So I think that's the simplest way to explain what's going on. So make sure you pass in the CSRF token, and we are on the right way. Another thing we're going to need is a type of submit. So type of submit is pretty much whatever you pass into a button whenever you mean business with submitting a form, and it's going to go to the back end, and you know you're going to process the form and all that. You want to make sure that you have a type of submit. Now there are others like type of button, and but most of the time you're going to be using the submit. Now to even get more serious, I'm going to pass in method and post. Now what does method post do? So remember from the other time when we pass in things into the form and it gets spit up in this URL over here. Now that's not going to happen again. We are not going to expose our data again, and that's because if I pass in all this data in here and hit register, now what do you notice? It refreshes the page, but this time around it's hiding it from the URL. It's saying, hey URL, you won't be able to see whatever is it that I passed into those fields, and that's because we used method post over here. Now you should use method post whenever you know you're going to be working with sensitive data, and sensitive data and you want to process them at the back end, the server side or whatever, you should work with post. But whenever you want to do things like search, let's say you want to search for you want to query a database, or you want to search for something, then I'd highly recommend you use get. Okay, so now we're using get. I'm going to fill this form again and register. What you notice is speeds that up over there. Cool. Now I'm going to change that back to post so we don't have any more error. And guys, I could proudly tell you all that from now we are pretty much done whatever it is that we want to do over here. All we need to do is go ahead and configure the main functionality in our views.py. Now, how do we configure the main functionality in our views.py? That's where the little challenging thing comes in. But don't worry, because you're with me, I'm going to help you guys scale through that. Now, the first thing that I want to check is if a user is logged in, do we want them to actually be able to access the login page? And that's a no, right? We shouldn't be able to allow them access the login page. Now, we're going to be doing that later. But the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and register this form. So I'm going to say if request.method is equal to post. Now, what does this mean? If request.method, now this method over here is simply going to come into whatever templates that we are using, and it's going to check the method over here. And what is the method? As you can see, the method over here is post. So we checked if the method is post, then we want to go ahead and do something else. We want to go ahead and we could say something like, we could print something like let's just say the user cannot be registered. User cannot be registered. And but what if the request.method is post? Now I'm just gonna come over here and I'm gonna say something like user registered, okay, or user registered successfully. That's totally up to you. Okay, so when this happens, I think that's pretty much what you want to do. And I'm just going to come over here and refresh this. We come over here now. What do you notice? It says user cannot be registered. Okay, and over here it says if the request.method is post, print user registered successfully, else print user cannot be registered. So when all this is done now, we need to go ahead and register the user, and for that we're going to be getting rid of this print and do something